As folks gather, be reminded this is an Aging Network conversation hosted by the Administration for Community Living's National Caregiver Support Collaborative. I'm Emma Kopleff from the National Caregiver Support Collaborative Technical Assistance Center. I'll be one of your facilitators today. We'll get started in just a moment. It looks like it is the top of the hour. We're looking forward to an informative and engaging discussion today. This event will be recorded, and the recording, slides, and other materials will be available on the National Caregiver Support Collaborative website. You do have the link to that website available to you in the chat. We hope you'll explore the materials there, including our growing resource library. Before we begin, I'd like to welcome John Weston on behalf of Administration for Community Living to offer a few opening comments.
Emma, thank you, and good afternoon. My name is Jonathan Weston. I'm an Aging Services Program Specialist with the Administration for Community Living, which is one of the independent agencies within the Department of Health and Human Services. I specialize in family caregiving, including overseeing the national strategy to support family caregivers and the update that we're currently undertaking forward. More than 63 million family caregivers provide most of the support that makes it possible for older adults and people with disabilities to live in the community. The National Caregiver Support Collaborative is a multifaceted initiative to increase the recognition, support, and inclusion of family, kin, and tribal caregivers across the nation, resulting in measurable improvements in the capacity of the network to assess caregiving needs, provide supportive services, collect data, and perhaps most importantly, support the well-being of caregivers and the people receiving care. We do this with our target audience being the collective folks served by the Aging Network. As most of you on this webinar know today, the Aging Network consists of vital partners of the Administration for Community Living across the nation, and those include area agencies on aging. AAAs, as we refer to them, were established under the Older Americans Act in 1973 to respond to the needs of Americans 60 and over in every community by providing a range of options that allow older adults to choose the home and community-based services and living arrangements that suit them best. AAAs make it possible for older adults to age in place in their homes and communities. The Pima Council on Aging, who we'll be hearing from today, focuses on 5 key pillars: the information and assistance efforts, including a helpline, meals and nutrition, caregiver support and education, in-home services and long-term care support, healthy aging and wellness, and advocacy and community planning. They do so by approaching these 5 pillars with a great amount of innovation and ingenuity. I think that it's fair to say that in these times of limited funding, limited resources, and limited partners, it does take a fair dose of creativity to ensure that this mission, this vital mission in AAAs, is met. And there's a couple of key principles that are among this besides innovation, preparedness being one, the foundation for care delivery, particularly for paid or non-paid caregivers. This is all about providing those caregivers. Many of you in the audience serve those caregivers daily. It's about providing them with the tools which will empower them. It's also about responsiveness, listening to caregiving stakeholders and pivoting the delivery to meet the needs that certainly will continue to serve as a resource for them, given the challenges inherent within being a caregiver. So with that, I look forward to joining you in the audience today and learning from PCOA, their aims and their goals at providing empowerment through creativity, preparedness, and responsiveness. Emma Koplev of Lewin, please take it away. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, John, for those remarks, and thank you everyone for joining us today. A little bit of housekeeping before we dive in. On the bottom of your screen, you should see these two icons pictured. Please use the Q&A function to submit questions at any time. Your questions and comments are visible to all participants. And if you have a specific question that does not relate to today's programming, we kindly ask that you email the National Caregiver Support Collaborative Technical Assistance and Coordinating Center directly, and we are providing that email address to you in the chat. To access communication, access real-time transcription, please click the show icon in the toolbar as pictured here. Everyone should have access to 2 American Sign Language interpreters whose video feeds are appearing on your screen. If for any reason you can't access any of these features, again, please feel free to email us. That email address is also available on the website if for whatever reason you do not see it in the chat. Or feel free, again, to use the Q&A to submit questions or comments. I will note we have a dedicated Q&A after our panel discussion today. But again, we welcome your participation in an engaging discussion today. Next slide, please. So just a little preview of what we can look forward to today. Soon, it will be my honor to introduce the Pima Council on Aging. We'll hear a little bit about their organization and their approach to robust caregiver offerings. We'll have a discussion with them, learning a bit more about those pillars John mentioned. Question and answer, which again is a time for those of you participating to share your ideas and questions, and wrap up. Next slide, please. We hope you leave here today with the ability to identify some examples of innovative caregiver support, and you have ideas for sharing them within your own organizations and applying them. Next slide, please. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce our 3 speakers from Pima Council on Aging. Harbhajan Khalsa is the Director for Dementia Capable Southern Arizona at Pima Council on Aging, where she's been serving older adults and caregivers since 2018. She's passionate about ensuring older adults and caregivers in the community have the support, education, and resources needed to navigate their journey. We have Deb Seng, is a Caregiver and Community Initiatives Director at Pima Council on Aging, where she's built her career on her background as a therapist, clinical director, and program director since 2019. She's passionate about driving innovation and high-quality programs to meet the needs of older adults and caregivers. And last but not least, Yadira Mosqueira is the Director of PimaCare at Home, with 9 years of experience at Pima Council on Aging. She started her career as a certified nursing assistant and earned a degree in medical, legal, and business translation interpretation. Yadira is passionate about training and empowering caregivers. I have no doubt by the end of this session, the passion of our presenters will be very clear to all of you listening today. And without further ado, Harbhajan, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Emma. And good afternoon, everyone. I want to start with giving an overview of PCOA. So PCOA is the Area Agency on Aging in Pima County. We've been established and up and running since 1967. Over 40,000 people turn to us each year for in-home services, basic needs assistance, advocacy, education, benefits, and caregiving support. We act as a service planner, coordinator, purchaser, provider, and advocate. Next slide, please. So I want to talk a little bit about who we serve. Primarily at PCOA, we serve older adults aged 60 and older. We aim to target individuals with the greatest economic and social needs. We serve family caregivers for older adults over 60. We have a program for grandparents raising grandchildren, and we serve adults with disabilities age 18 and older. I also want to provide a little bit of an overview of where we are in the kinds of clients that we serve. So PCOA serves Pima County, which spans almost over 10,000 square miles in southern Arizona, with over 1 million residents. The primary demographics in Pima County are the Hispanic population at about 38%, and the non-Hispanic white population at about 50%, with approximately 22% of the population that is Spanish speaking. Given that at PCOA, we strive to have as many bilingual staff as possible and provide as many services in English and Spanish. Additionally, we also have interpretation services that we use, as we have many smaller communities in Pima County that do not speak English. So we want to make sure that our services are accessible and equitable to all. And next, I will pass it to Deb.
Thank you so much, Harbhajan. One of the things that we like to do is to create and provide caregiving support services that are as broad as possible. And for us, we define caregivers as both informal caregivers, most of whom have had no formal training, nor do they receive compensation. In addition, we have specific programs that are dedicated to provide assistance and activities to those who are caring for a loved one who is showing signs of dementia. And we also have a very specific for-profit organization and branch of PCOA that is focused on workforce development and credential-focused training for professional caregivers, providing direct care for older adults as well as people with disabilities in our community. You'll notice that we have a wide range of supports and services for these caregivers. And in order to ensure that our approach is holistic, we start by providing training that includes information and hands-on instruction to normalize the challenges, empower caregivers with knowledge, and to ensure and preserve safety for caregivers and care recipients alike. Support groups for caregivers, both of older adults as well as for older adults caring for minor children and their families, provide stigma-free opportunities for caregivers to not only let off steam, but to build community and to know that they're not alone. Personalized consultations provide opportunities for our specialists to tailor plans specific to the needs of the individuals and families that we're serving. And these might include recommendations for either informal or formal respite connections, referrals to a wide range of community resources, and even assistance with end-of-life care planning and the completion of advanced directives. For those who are concerned that their loved one is showing symptoms of cognitive decline, we offer free memory screenings to create a baseline from which treatment can be determined in future days. Memory cafes in multiple locations throughout the community so that caregivers and those with dementia have a safe place to interact and socialize. And we have options counseling for those confronting dementia that is accessible and inclusive. Now, we all know that caregiving tends to be a marathon and not a sprint. And so our supports and services are not one and done, but instead are available in an ongoing and consistent way to provide this training, support, and guidance for every step of the journey. For more in-depth information and understanding about our efforts around professional caregiving, it's my pleasure to pass you to Yadira.
Thank you, Deb. So PimaCare at Home is a company of Pima Council on Aging, and it was established in 2010, and it has allowed us to stay closely aligned with community-based services. We offer both short-term and long-term non-medical home care, supporting individuals and families at different stages of needs. Our services focus on personal care, homemaker support, companionship, supervision, and respite care, which we really focus on addressing both the physical and the emotional needs of the individuals and the families that we serve, especially when it comes to the respite care, allowing us to assist the caregivers that are non-paid, take some time to take relief time, whether it's to take time for self-care, whether it's time to go down to the grocery store by themselves and know that their loved one is being cared for during the time period that they are stepping away. Our services are funded through a variety of services, including Arizona Long-Term Care, which would have contracts with managed care organizations, partnerships with the VA, private pay clients, and internal PCOA clients as well. Besides providing services directly to clients, we are also a state certified training provider for direct care workers and caregivers. And we also provide first aid CPR training. PimaCare at Home built a lab that models a home-like setting, which helps caregivers better prepare for the work they do. It's very important for them to understand that while some folks are trained in lab settings, while when they go to do the actual work, it is in people's homes, and it is very different to go in on the first day and understand that that's not the setting that they were trained in. So we built this skills lab that it's a multiple purpose use skills lab that we'll elaborate a little bit later on during our presentation. And with that, I'll go ahead and pass it on to Harbhajan.
Thank you, Yadira. So I want to spend a few moments talking about our partners and our funders. I won't go super in depth on this as we will talk about this more in the panel discussion. I want to emphasize that this is a list of some of our partners. This is not all the partners that we have at PCOA. But I did want to emphasize that we're successful here at PCOA because of our partnerships. We collaborate with multiple organizations to help amplify our efforts and services. And I did want to highlight two of those organizations and ways that we've partnered. We have a long-standing history of working with the United Way of Tucson and Southern Arizona. We have partnered with them on our dementia programming. We have also partnered with them for services and training through PimaCare at Home. I would also like to note that through this partnership with the United Way, we co-chair an action team called the Elder Alliance. The Elder Alliance is a broad collaboration of nonprofit organizations, businesses, government agencies, and community partners who serve older adults in Pima County. I also would like to strongly encourage you all, if you are not already doing so, to look at partnering with your city or county governments. At PCOA, we have had great success in these partnerships, ranging from healthy living classes to trainings, education, and tabling events. One thing I would like to highlight as well is through our partnership with the Pima County Health Department, we've been able to engage in multiple media campaigns to help promote risk reduction and brain health for older adults that have been very successful and widely received. And without this partnership, we would not have been able to undergo those types of media campaigns. Next slide, please. So I will briefly talk about our funding sources again, as we will get into this in the panel discussion. PCOA has very diverse funding sources. Of course, we do receive the bulk of our funding through the Older Americans Act, as we are a AAA. We have also been grateful to receive multiple grants through the Administration for Community Living, foundation grants, and managed care organization grants. We also receive funding through local municipal funds, as Yadira talked about, the Veterans Administration, and self-pay clients through PimaCare at Home. One thing that I will note is that the partnerships we have are crucial to the funding sources that we receive. We collaborate with our partners and other organizations on grant applications, which not only help us strengthen our applications, but more importantly, the work that we do. As one organization cannot alone meet the needs of older adults in our communities, we need strong partnerships in order to do that. And with that, I will pass it over back to Emma. Thank you.
Thank you all so much. Please don't go too far. Christina Neal Bowen, a member of our TA team, supporting administration for community living, has joined us on the screen. Thank you, Christina, who will be facilitating a panel discussion as we dive a little deeper into PCOA's experience and lessons learned. Christina, feel free to take it away.
Great. Thanks, Emma. And thanks for that introduction to PCOA. I think the audience can really see from your remarks how broad the scope of your caregiving services are. And they should also see that we're talking to three of you, and it's not just one person's job at your organization to work with caregivers. It's really woven throughout the fabric of your organization. And so I hope that's one of the takeaways our audience can get from today. So many different innovative ways to do things. And hopefully, even if a smaller AAA is listening, they'll be able to take something away, because you've really covered all the bases with your creativity in terms of partnerships. And so we want to talk a little bit about that. So the first thing we want to get into is, how did this evolve? How did you get to offer all these wonderful services to caregivers? And, can you tell us a little bit about how those offerings were developed? And yes, thank you for moving on to that slide that frames our question. So, Deb, I see you off mute, so take it away.
Thank you so much, Christina. We think a lot about implementing programming that is both robust and relevant. And what we do is we bring two primary values to not only our work, but the language that we use, whether it's in marketing or in assisting people. These two values really include informed decision-making and intentional planning. And when we shape the work that we do with those two values, we begin to change and shift the way that folks deal with the challenges of aging and caregiving. This creates a lens whereby we value proactive decision-making, and we create fewer requirements for reactive or crisis management. In order to accomplish this, one of the things that our caregiving specialists do is they listen deeply to their clients in a very client-focused way. And in their minds, they are identifying needs, they're addressing strategies, they're listening for values and perspectives, and they're tailoring an approach that is specific to that care recipient and his or her caregivers. This then also becomes a way of informing the programming that we develop and that we implement. Our specialists come back to us as leaders in the agency, and they tell us what they're experiencing. They share with us the trends that they're observing, and this then informs the programming that we create. And one of the questions that Harbhajan, Yadira, and I is, how do we get the fundamental information and answer the most frequently asked questions around caregiving to the broadest and most appropriate swath of caregivers in our communities? And this informs our decisions then about how to develop specific trainings on topics that are coming up. It helps us to know that there are experts in our community that we can invite in to do workshops to meet the needs that are recurring. And we have the opportunity to write newsletter articles for our bi-monthly publication, which we call Never Too Late, and create media campaigns, whether that's radio, TV, print, or social media.
Great. Harbhajan, do you want to add anything to that, or?
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to add one thing to that as an example of how we've addressed this with partners, creative partners and collaboration. So as Deb has talked about, partnership is crucial to the work that we do. Not only are our partners lifting us up, we are also lifting them up. And there's limited capacity. I think all of aging network organizations are experiencing that. So one way that we have chose to address this is through one of our dementia programs. As Deb had talked about, we offer memory cafes. And this is something that was new to PCOA 5 years ago. They were in Phoenix and Maricopa County, but they hadn't quite made it down to Pima County. And so through a grant with ACL, we sat down and figured, how can we make this work? We only have so much that we can do at PCOA. What if we create a training model? What if we create a hub model? And so what we did was we launched 2 cafes ourselves to figure out how it goes. We worked with partners in Boston and across the nation to learn from what folks have done. And we launched 2 cafes here. And then we created a hub model where we provide training, materials, supplies, and support to other organizations so they can then take that information and offer cafes at their organization. So we've been able to expand from 2 cafes now to 9 throughout Pima County with plans to launch many more in the coming year. And we're very excited that we'll be able to launch a cafe this year in partnership with the health department in Ajo, Arizona, which is our most rural community in Pima County.
That is excellent. I worked at a memory cafe, so it's near and dear to my heart, but it also speaks to that prevention piece of really kind of getting people together, building community that can hedge off certain crises before they even begin. So I love that. And I think what you were saying, Deb, too, about intentional planning and really trying to listen deeply to what caregivers are telling you across the organization and then spread that knowledge to a broader group of people, that is very much in line with the current ACL mission, vision, and priorities, where caregiving is the #1 priority, and marketing, letting people know about the services of the Aging Network, is another very strong priority. So I appreciate you calling out those 2 pieces. If we move to the next slide, I want to talk a little bit about, or get into, I guess, the details a bit on these partnerships. You've mentioned so many different partners, but what lessons do you have for folks sitting out there thinking about, I might want to go after some of these unlikely partners in my community and see if we can build something together? Yadira?
Yes, I'll speak to that a little bit. So I think for us, something that was very important was identifying these areas of need. And rather than tackling this alone, we thought to reach out to community partners to become a united front. And by doing that, we started leveraging these partnerships to remove those barriers. Specifically with United Way of Tucson and Southern Arizona, we were able to support individuals that were entering the workforce. And this came during a very crucial area. We started this back right at the beginning of what we now call as 2020 crisis of COVID. And when this began, it was during a time of so much uncertainty, and the need for caregivers and direct care workers was, very, very much at an all-time high. And so we started to look at how can we remove some of these barriers, and together we were able to come along with some of the funding that we received from these managed care organizations to remove those barriers, the training cost, first aid CPR cost, fingerprint clearance cost, and then also help navigate these folks that were interested in this field throughout the entire process, and then still provide ongoing support for these folks to be able to stay within this field. Afterwards, we're able to continue providing appreciation events, which have been very, very helpful to be able to see how folks have either remained in the field and or continued growing within the medical field. And it's so interesting to be able to see where they start to where they continue to grow, go back to school, see their career path, and see the growth and empowerment that they have all gone through. This becomes a very replicable model for building sustainable workforce pipeline. And I'll speak to another partnership that we've worked with specifically with PimaCare at Home. It was working with Intertribal Council of Arizona. They reached out to us and we held hands-on training for caregivers. We went up there and provided directly for their members of family caregivers, non-paid family caregivers, a training that focused on how to utilize durable medical equipment and how to navigate the relationship between their loved ones and how to do so respectfully, but also keeping boundaries very much in place so that both could receive the support that they needed and still be able to have very clear boundaries of, this is my work time, and then this is time where I can also do, my life, but very respectfully. So it was very interesting to be able to partner with them and provide that support. And then they also sent direct care workers who were interested in joining the workforce to be able to serve members of the community up in Phoenix in those rural areas. So that was very awesome to be able to join with them, and hopefully we'll continue to partner with them and do so in that capacity. We also partner, and it's very important for us to do so internally with family caregiver support, and this is where we for example, with Deb in Harbhajan, the work is not just external, but it's also internal. When I talked about earlier about the skills lab, this skills lab is used for multiple programs. We provide training which focuses on the skills part, specifically to train folks how to use the durable medical equipment and what items in that skills lab might benefit those family members and go back home and utilize it to be able to give quality of life back to their loved ones, and empower not just their loved ones, but also themselves as a caregiver and provide that tool to them. So, and I'll turn it over to Harbhajan so she can speak a little bit more about the collaborations and partnerships that we've had with Dementia Capable of Southern Arizona as well.
Thanks, Yadira. I wanted to highlight two examples and kind of some suggestions for folks if they're looking for ways for partnership. So we've already talked a lot, I feel like a broken record, of the importance of partnerships. One of the things I wanted to highlight that we did about 4 years ago through our dementia program was we created a dementia action team as a as a kind of part from the Elder Alliance with the United Way. So our dementia action team meets bi-monthly. It brings together folks from the city, the county, nonprofit organizations, community partners, and volunteers to not only talk about the dementia work, services, and resources in our community, but more importantly, to identify service gaps and create solutions to fill those gaps. This has been really successful, and one of the things that we've done to help identify new partners is the simple ask of bring a friend. Bring a friend, bring a colleague who is not at the table that should be, because we all sometimes fall into the silo challenge and it can be difficult. You've got your main partners, but there are so many folks, whether it's an organization or a group of volunteers or a local church, that are empowered and wanting to do this work. And so the simple ask of, bring a friend, bring someone who's interested in this work has been really helpful for us as we've been growing this area. One other thing I wanted to note with looking at kind of creative ways to bring on new partners. So with our first grant through ACL for our dementia programming, it was very successful. We served a lot of older adults and their caregivers. But one of the things we realized in looking at the data was the demographics of those we served did not match our community. We predominantly served 65-year-old white females who were caregivers. And we sat back as we kind of wrapped up the first grant and went, this doesn't really match what we have in Pima County. We want to apply for more funding. How can we be intentional? How can we cast a wider net? How can we meet the community's needs where they're at? And so one of the ways that we did that is we were very intentional and sought out organizations in our community, such as Chicanos por la Causa and YWCA, who are rooted in our Spanish-speaking communities to be partners with us in this work. And so for the second grant that we're working through right now with ACL, both of these locations are offering bilingual memory cafes. We have options counselors who come out and offer bilingual services in English and Spanish, as well as we've been working diligently to get our trainings translated into Spanish and have those being available at these community locations. Because we've noticed that sometimes asking folks to come to our office is a barrier. And so we wanted to eliminate as many barriers as possible and be accessible and in the community where folks are wanting services.
That's excellent. So a couple themes there I heard you all hammer home, and one is really those shared pain points. Like, what is something that you and your partners can share and solve together? And I love the practical advice of ask a friend, bring a friend. So that sounds like that's worked out really well for you, and others could potentially try that. So let's go on to the third question. And this question, if we want to move to the next slide, is how are you reaching caregivers? So this is a kind of, how are you finding the individuals that need this? And you touched on this a little bit because you're really doing a lot of evaluating, like, does our programming match our demographics in our community? But Deb, please share more.
Absolutely. You know, one of the things that we've had opportunity to do is to reflect on the fact that, as is true in our community, it's likely true across the country. And that is, caregivers are not bound by generation, nor by culture, nor value system, or spirituality. And so figuring out ways to engage all of the multicultural, multi-generational folks that are providing caregiving really means going to where they are and being with them in their communities. And part of this means borrowing the credibility, if you will, of leaders in those communities. And that's an important thing. In addition to that, creating spaces where anyone and everyone is welcome to be part of an activity and engaging the community at multiple levels is also super significant. One of the events that we are most excited about is our Caregiver Appreciation Festival. This is something that we'd really like to consider our signature event, and we hold it in November in celebration of National Caregiver Month. One of the things that we found was that by providing an accessible and inclusive space for caregivers and care recipients alike to play games, to dance and listen to music, to have meaningful conversations, and to be able to gather resources at the same time was a way of getting everyone involved. And part of the idea that we used for this was engaging the community at multiple levels as well. So we invited, for example, a steel drum band from one of the local high schools to play. And we're surprised at the number of caregivers and care recipients that danced and sang and bounced along to the music. We had local food trucks that came in and donated their fun and their services and even their food to our participants. We had social service agencies and groups come to hand out information. We had local businesses who had contributed raffle prizes to give away. And this was a way of having generations and diverse people groups come together in shared space around shared needs and actually be able to connect and have fun without judgment. That event in particular, we estimate that what was donated to us in terms of time and goods and resources was somewhere between $5,000 and $10,000, which is just a beautiful way of having the community involved. We also are really strategic about getting the message into the community. We sought funds from a community reinvestment grant of a local healthcare system, and they provided us the money to be able to do a broad focused media campaign. We called this the Am I a Caregiver campaign, and it focused on radio and TV ads. It had print media, social media, and we really were trying to help all people understand that whether you're checking in on an older adult, whether you're doing errands for someone like a neighbor or a family member, or whether you're providing hands-on care in the context of an older adult's home. All of these are pieces of caregiving, and there are supports and services and information available to help. This Am I a Caregiver media campaign was highly effective and really focused on three of the most common situations that we find. One of them is long distance caregiving, especially when the loved one is becoming isolated. So many folks think that they can't access services if their loved one lives here in Pima County because they don't live here as the caregiver. But in fact, we can empower them with local information to help meet that caregiver's needs and to ensure that their loved one, in this case, a father, is not isolated and withdrawing from the supports and services available. We also had a vignette that focused on a granddaughter of a rural elder who was showing signs of cognitive decline, struggling with transportation, and forgetting all of the medical information and advice from his appointments. And we normalized her struggle to be able to be there with him and for him and let that younger person know that there are supports available to her as well. And then, as is so much the case, especially in some of our Spanish-speaking families, it is a family of young children who took in their mother and grandmother after a broken hip, and helping folks in that sandwich situation to understand that there are resources available to empower and strengthen and encourage them through the journey. This sort of multi-pronged approach at helping people to understand what is available, to break down that sense of not perceiving themselves as a caregiver and giving them a straightforward one-step approach to how they can connect with experts in the community is really, and being where they are the strategies that we have most effectively used in order to reach caregivers here in Pima County.
That's fantastic. And yes, we know that in the field, it is this idea that people don't self-identify as caregivers, and that sometimes is a barrier for them getting support. So you're really taking that on head on. And I want to encourage the audience too, that the study that just came out the end of last year from the National Alliance for Caregiving and AARP actually has state-by-state profiles. So you can do similarly to PCOA and see how well are you reaching the caregivers in your own local communities by measuring against that. So that is really fantastic. For our last question, we have about 7 minutes, and we really want to get into how you sort of sustain these programs, the funding question. I know a lot of people are probably thinking, how did you get those contracts set up? How did you work with managed care? All of that. I'm seeing some of those questions come in the Q&A. But tell us a little bit about some of your funding strategies and maybe some of the outcomes that you've had to demonstrate in order to get those funding strategies and sources.
Absolutely. Happy to talk about that a little bit, and then I'll pass it to Yadira to talk more about PimaCare at home and the private pay that we do. So we, as I talked about earlier, really strive to have diverse funds. We don't want, as an organization or any specific program, to be solely dependent on one funding source. We want there to be flexibility because we don't know what's going to happen, and we don't want to be in a position where we have to pull needed crucial services from our community. And so that's why we have such diverse funding. We utilize foundational funds to allow for innovative community reinvestment, as Deb talked about, the Caregiver Appreciation Event. We also use those funds to help plan end-of-life care outreach, workshops, and creating caregiver survival kits. One of the things that we've used, and I encourage folks to look at, is be creative. Reach out to your local utility companies. We've had really great success with Tucson Electric Power and Southwest Gas, and they'll provide us with $10,000 to help promote an area, to help with staffing, to help buy materials. They'll also be really interested in putting on a workshop or a webinar. And so one of the things that we've been really intentional at is not looking just for the big grants, but looking across the field, looking for small foundational funding, mid-level funding, large $1 million funding, because we want to be able to fill those gaps, to be adaptive and to be creative. One example I wanted to provide is for our dementia program, no staff is fully funded under one source. Each one of them, myself included, we have multiple allocations. We're divided up between 6 or 7 grants and programs. And it helps us because we just don't know. We don't want to be reliant on one funding source. We've looked for funds through managed care organizations, as Deb and Yadira have talked about, and those have been really successful. Those have been wonderful partnerships for us to have, as well as looking through for state and federal grants. I will be honest, it can be a challenge. Our dementia program is 100% grant funded. It does not receive funds through the Older Americans Act, which is exciting because there's a lot of space for creativity and innovation. And as the person who manages those budgets, it can also be a little bit terrifying. And so I'm not saying it's, there's one solution, but we have worked over the last 5 years of building from one funding source, ACL, to now 6. And so it takes time, it takes diligence. We plan, months and months in advance. We have, ahead of time how long the funding lasts. So plan ahead. And back to my broken record of partnerships, talk to your partners. That's been what has helped us be so successful with our grant applications, is that we're not going in it alone. Whether we are the primary person applying for the grant or it's one of our partners, we are collaborative, and that helps us use more resources than we would if it was just us, and it expands the work even more. And I did want to touch, Christina, on the data piece of that. Data is crucial. As much as we like it or not, it is imperative for the work that we do and to be able to apply for funding. Without data, we cannot show the impact and the outcomes of the work that we do. It makes it so we can easily apply for funding. We're very intentional at PCOA about collecting data, not just demographic data, while that is very important. We also collect outcomes data. We look at quality of life, reduction in social isolation, reduction in stress, not just for the individuals, but for the caregivers themselves. And we take this data and we're able to show the improvements. A caregiver going through powerful tools for caregiving, for example, we're able to see that their quality of life improved, that they're feeling less isolated, that they're feeling less stressed. While we may not be able to eliminate their burden, because as we know with caregivers, burden will increase potentially, we're able to alleviate those other factors and give them the tools. And by taking these surveys, we're able to demonstrate that, go to another funder and say, hey, look at the success we've had with this cohort of caregivers. We want to be able to amplify this. We want to be able to offer this in Spanish or in our rural communities. Would you be willing to work with us on that? And that's been really successful for us. And now pass it to Yadira to talk a little bit more about PimaCare at home.
That's great. I think people really want to hear about that, Yadira. Maybe you could do that in like a minute, and then we'll use the last minute to wrap up our panel.
Absolutely. I think it's a little bit shorter. So with PimaCare at Home, we do have private pay clients. And so the funding that comes into PimaCare at Home from either any of the funding sources that we have, the revenue, we obviously look at enhancing our training space to ensure that we can continue providing more than state required training to ensure that, the training that's being given to these caregivers is really preparing them for the real world, right? Not just what is mandated by the state. And ensuring that we're providing them with benefits and the resources, like Harbhajan mentioned, some of these survival kits, self-care kits, to really, really be able to do the work well and empower them, continue to empower them. That is one of the biggest pushes that we have, is ensuring that they understand, they know who they are as caregivers and what type of work they do. So the revenue that comes from PimaCare at Home is then given back to Pima Council on Aging so that they can utilize those funds as needed within any of the programs as they see fit. So it's a little bit interesting. Yes, we are a for-profit company owned by Pima Council on Aging, which is a very neat partnership that we have internally so that we can continue. Sometimes there are programs where if something happens with funding or we lose a grant, but there is an emergency crisis or which we tend to kind of shy away from because we are not emergency crisis centers, but there are certain situations where we can assist. This is where our funding kind of allows for that type of assistance and help. So
That's perfect. And that speaks to, I think, one of the questions in the Q&A that was asking for you to talk a little bit about your business model. How do you have the for-profit and the nonprofit? So thank you for addressing that, Yadira. In closing, I just want to ask each of you if you could share a piece of advice, a word or phrase that you want to leave the audience with. Harbhajan?
Yeah, I will start off. So the word that I chose was creative. There are a lot of restrictions in funding and programs and services, but that does not mean that there is not room for creativity and innovation. And so think outside of the box, bring together folks that you never would have thought to bring together. Don't be afraid to ask questions or to seek clarity, but just be as creative as you can be, and you'll be amazed with how much you're able to do.
Awesome. Yadira?
for us, it's preparedness. It is your foundation for care delivery. By providing caregivers with tools to empower them, it creates sustainable solutions for the community at large.
And Deb?
In our area, I'd say it's responsiveness, really listening hard and understanding, filling in the gaps and identifying that which is not being spoken so that we can provide information and resources around those needs and anticipate what the next level of concern might be.
Wonderful. So you've heard it, everyone. Creativity, preparedness, responsiveness. I want to thank all three of you so much for your insights and the thoughtfulness that went into your responses. And I will turn it back to Emma for a few Q&A.
Thank you for everyone participating today. We've had a lot of great questions in the chat. You can see some of the answers there. Again, thank you so much, PCOA team, for sharing your expertise with us. I will just tee up a few more questions. We had someone who asked about wanting to learn more about programs with a wide focus. The example they gave for their own program was that serving both older adults and adults with physical disabilities and their caregivers, that's our focus today, has been a difficult road in terms of finding shared space. And Harbhajan, I think you mentioned in a different context, sort of what did you call it? The silo challenge. So hoping you all could elaborate a little bit more on your words of wisdom for building programs that serve different caregiving populations, whether it's older adults and adults with physical disabilities or caregivers in transition, which we also received a question about.
Start and then pass it off to my wonderful colleagues. So I can give a very specific example. So we are now on our second grant through the Administration for Community Living through their ADPI program. And a part of that work is asking for us to provide services and find a way to bridge that gap for those aging with developmental disabilities. I am not an expert, nor do I have all the answers. I can share our lessons learned and how we have pivoted because it is a challenge. It is a big challenge. In our first grant, we had lofty ideas and we thought we would be more successful in bridging that gap, and we were not. We really struggled. And so one of the things that was very successful for us is we partnered with the University of Arizona Sonoran Center on Excellence in Disabilities. They have been a phenomenal partner. They provide services to those aging with developmental disabilities and their caregivers. And that has allowed us to kind of get into work with this network. What we just did for this grant is we took a large step back and we just completed a listening session for those with disabilities and their caregivers to really hear what their needs are, what we can do to help fill those. And now we're working on developing some educational curriculum for that.
I would also add here in Arizona, the system makes it a little bit challenging. Aging services and disability services are administered completely separately. So the silos go all the way to the top. And so in many ways, it comes back to the partnerships that Harbhajan and Yadira spoke to. And so we do have partnerships with a number of the organizations in our community that provide supports and services to those who have disabilities, whether they're developmental or physical or intellectual. And so we try very hard to be at the community events that would include the populations served by our partners. And one of the things that Arizona is also working on is convening and completing a statewide plan for caregivers that would make sure that there is a streamlined, no wrong door process for caregivers of every population, including small children, to have a one-stop place to go to get the referral directly to the supports and services that they need. That right now is being housed through a nonprofit organization called the Arizona Caregiver Coalition, and we are just in the process of nailing down that statewide strategy and have much more work to do in that process in the future.
Speaking briefly to the caregiver portion of it, I know that we've worked with one of the partners is with United Way is creating a career path ladder and bridge program. So and we are continuously looking for partners who can provide those trainings. PimaCare at Home being one of them that does the direct care worker training, which is an entry-level position, but then looking for partners who would provide the certified caregiver training, and then also the CNA training and assisted living manager training. So these are trainings that, would help alleviate in different scenarios for folks that are needing a higher level of care, whether it's for going into homes and or for, because of disabilities and or any other type of level of care that they need. So we have continuously and will continue to work with providers in our area. And so it has been thus far, it's got off the ground and now we are looking to get that off the ground again. It was paused for a little bit. So it has been interesting and hopefully that we can get caregivers, and I think more than anything, it's providing the education around it, right? Not a lot of people know, so providing education, advertisement, and information around this is so important.
Thank you all so much. I wish we had more time, but I'm going to turn us toward wrapping things up today. I know there are a few unanswered questions in the chat. PCOA folks, if you have a few minutes while I wrap us up, and you have a chance to respond to those questions in writing, please feel free. But no expectation here. We'll continue to coordinate, those of us at the National Caregiver Support Collaborative, Technical Assistance and Coordinating Center, with our colleagues here at PCOA, and we will be summarizing this event, and we'll try to wrap in some of these actionable resources. So I see some questions, for example, about what exactly is the survival kit. Are there examples or freely available resources that you all have used at your memory cafes? Those sorts of things. I see people are really hungry for learning from you, what's worked, what hasn't, what's out there already. So we'll stay in touch and communicate that out to those of participating by way of our summary, and or anyone participating today can email us at any time and we can follow up on any outstanding questions. So with that, next slide, please. We're just going to wrap up here. There are some resources shown on the slide, and those will pop up in your chat as well, that we hope everyone will check out and stay engaged with us. For example, we have another webinar coming up on the topic of caregiver navigation that will feature National Caregiver Support Collaborative grantee US Aging. Registration details are in the chat and also on our website. We also encourage all of you to sign up for our listserv and have provided that information. Again, that's the best way to stay up to date with new resources and follow up from conversations like this one. And lastly, as you all log off today, a survey will pop up on your screen. Please take a few minutes to fill it out. Let us know how your experience was today. Share ideas for future topics. I have a feeling we might be seeing our PCOA colleagues again if they're willing, because this truly was a really great opportunity to thank you for sharing your enthusiasm with us, your ideas, your wisdom, and we can see from the chat that you've spurred some new ideas for others today. So thank you. Please join us next time. Have a good night.